All right, Doc. What else we got?
This one says, hello, I saw your videos on YouTube and I would just like to reach out to you. I live in Chicago and I'm currently on TRT. My SHBG levels are at 9, so I'm dosing at 40 milligrams cypionate every 3 days. My estradiol levels are always between 21 and 25, assuming picograms per milliliter, due to my taking 0.5 milligrams of anastrozole every other day. I had pre-existing gynecomastia going into TRT, and my gyno is only getting worse. Any ideas why this might be happening with low E2 estradiol? I have not tested progesterone, but my prolactin levels are low. I am definitely on every vitamin and mineral according to testosterone therapy textbook requirements, and I am also taking thyroid support from Mega Foods. My thyroid hormone levels are all okay. Vitamin D levels are 45 to 55. I don't know if that's what measurement that is. I started TRT because my base level testosterone was only 300 nanograms per deciliter. I blame years of marijuana use. Been sober entire time of TRT. Any ideas on what might be going on? Where are you located? I hope to hear from you soon. Thank you, Brian. So this one's an interesting question because he says my SHBG levels are 9, so I'm dosing 40 milligrams of testosterone cypionate every 3 days. I'm not sure what the connection there is, but SHBG can be lowered. We've talked about this in videos before with, things that tend to lower high protein diet, lowering. I think the most effective way I've seen is lowering your E2, your estradiol, to somewhere around, between 15 to 20, but there's a tipping point, under which you hit it maybe, 21 picograms per milliliter estradiol, and all of a sudden your SHBG drops. The 40 milligrams of cypionate every 3 days, if I may digress for just a minute or go off on a bit of a tangent, I don't understand this one. I don't know why every 3 days isn't so bad as the everyday dosing and stuff like that. The whole idea of an esterified form of testosterone is it's time released.
Right.
You don't have to poke yourself, whether it's subcutaneously now they're doing or intramuscularly frequently. So I'm not really sure what this is, but I would also, I guess what he's saying is, it's dawning me, I apologize. This is a low dose of cypionate, and he's taking effectively, 90 or so, because 80 every 3 days, whatever it amounts to, less than 100 milligrams a week. But because his SHBG is low, his free T is enough to keep him going and abate the symptoms of low T. Are you with me on guessing that one? I don't know. Maybe that's what your point is, and okay, I appreciate that. And if it's alleviating your symptoms, that's the most important part. But the estradiol is between 21 and 25. I'm assuming picograms per milliliter. Again, it doesn't matter if that's within that what I think is magic of 15 and 20, because obviously your SHBG is low enough, as you stated. The gyno is getting worse. That's interesting because a lot of times, first of all, if you've got gynecomastia, the abnormal breast tissue growth, typically because of excess estrogen being present, it's almost invariably much bigger than you think it is. I've been part of many of these surgeries, and if it's palpable like a marble, when we get in there, it's like a golf ball. Wow. Okay, it's always much bigger once we open. And oftentimes people become aware of it quite by chance. They bump into something and oh man, it's tender. When the estrogen levels are a little higher than they normally are, and it becomes a little aggravated, and then they think it grew overnight, or but it might have been there for a long time, because a lot of people have it, and just because it doesn't ache anymore, and it doesn't show cosmetically when they raise their arm or anything like that, it's pretty much gone to them effectively. The estrogen it's within normal range, but I wouldn't consider this ideal between 21 and 25 estradiol at all. And I would consider dropping it a little lower to see, and it won't be as easy as everyone thinks. This comes up a lot, and this will be another tangent, I apologize, but the arguments about aggressive use of anastrozole. First of all, anastrozole per se does not have any negative side effects, okay? It's the excessive reduction in estradiol that causes the negative side effects, reduce HDL, achy joints. You need some estrogen for brain, heart, and joint health. But it's remember that it lowers SHBG, which gets you more free T. It also gets you more free what? estrogen, right? So, that's why typically, you'll see somebody who drops their estrogen from, let's say, crazy number like 60 to 35 with, an anastrozole strategically placed the day after their injection, right, of testosterone. And they go, well, great. So now it's 35. I wanted to get to 20. I'll just do another one. It doesn't work that way. Why? Because as you drive the SHBG down, or as they drive the estradiol down, the estrogens down, we use estradiol as a surrogate marker for all of them because it's the most prevalent. And I'll come back to that in a second because, well, I'll address it right now. What if the problem is this guy's got an abnormal ratio of estrogens? And the estradiol is showing very relatively low, but the estrone is higher than it typically is. Then that could be aggravating the gynecomastia. But we're not there anyway. Let's try getting it down to 15 to 20, I would suggest, and see if it doesn't go away. But I'm going off of too many tangents here. I apologize. But going back to the anastrozole dosing, that's why it requires more as you start driving it lower and lower. You've got the anastrozole driving the estradiol lower, but the SHBG driving it higher, right? The free estradiol. So that's why typically, I get the bug eyes sometimes. What? Every other day anastrozole to start with? Well, if we want to get to 15 to 20 picograms per milliliter of estradiol, yeah. So in this gentleman, Brian's case, I would consider using even more anastrozole, okay? I would also sort of break the glass, the emergency glass in this case, and jump right on tamoxifen, because that will block any estrogen right away. And it'll give us some diagnostic value to find out, like he says, prolactin is low. We already, that would be the first thing I would check, right? Is this a different kind of breast mass? But, if all of a sudden the pain goes away or it starts to shrink a little bit, we know, okay, well, it definitely is estrogen. And we might look into, well, maybe it's just not the estradiol. We need to focus, again, we're using that as a surrogate, but we've got, 25 estrogens, three more or less main ones, but we've identified at least 25 so far. Maybe it's another one that happens to be elevated. It's particular to him and his individual body chemistry that's doing the problem. They're causing the problem. But again, then at least you certainly make the patient a lot more comfortable that, hey, we got this under control, we're blocking it. And then drive your estrogens down even lower with even more anastrozole than he's using, and see if then when you pull the tamoxifen, you feel better. Now, just FYI, in studies it shows that when you combine tamoxifen with anastrozole, I always get this number, I'll be close, you're going to reduce the efficacy of the anastrozole a little bit. I think it's like 13 or 17%, Okay, so just use a little bit more. Yeah. But the idea, I think, did I make it clear about, let's stop any effect on estrogen right away with some tamoxifen, and that would be typically like 10 milligrams twice a day. And you'll know almost immediately, within almost sometimes within hours. You go, oh, wow, it feels much better. And then you know for sure it's estrogen. And then, drive it down a little bit lower. As for the rest of I don't know to what you're referring about the vitamins and minerals with testosterone therapy.
Maybe he just wants to let you know he's being good.
Well, no, but they're good. Yeah, there's two main ones, and I'm an accountant before I'm a doctor, right? We talked about that at one point. So I'm presumably honest and conservative. Everybody who comes into my office, I recommend vitamin B. The B's complex, all of them. Why? Nobody gets enough. Remember that I called it the Krebs cycle. You guys might have called the citric acid cycle now. How we convert food into usable energy. Remember that circle we had to memorize, all those coenzymes and whatnot? Well, it requires many of the B vitamins. It requires zinc, magnesium, coenzyme Q10. So we're burning through B vitamins, and they're water soluble. We don't keep that many on board, so if you don't keep it, you're essentially urinating them right out. You're going to have to keep replacing them, just like calories, right? If you're trying to keep the muscle full, you got to keep eating, because as soon as you start walking around with all that extra muscle mass, you're burning off that glycogen, right? So no one gets enough B. I mean, just waking up in the 21st century is stressful. You're
so how much would you?
That's a good question. I mean, every B complex out there has a different idea of what's good. I will say this: don't buy into a B100 or a B50. Who came up with that number? What Mother Nature's 50 across the board. Never seen that, man. A lot of companies, and this is not a plug or anything like that, but I'm not going to denigrate some of the other ones, but I'll give kudos to there's a bunch of them, but Life Extension Foundation, they will base their complex formulation on studies. They'll say, in this study, we got good results using, 2 milligrams of folic acid and 363 milligrams of, I should have said micrograms, right? But 363 milligrams of, pantothenic acid or whatever. So it's based on some knowledge base. It doesn't mean it's right either, but at least we're trying. It's not just 50 across the board.
Right.
Designs for Health, another good company that comes up with studies and has a thought process behind their B complex. But I got to tell you, I've tried this before where, okay, well, I'm low, and it's not necessarily easy to test B. B12 is, but all the Bs, it's a pain.
Yeah.
Every meal, a complex, and I still tested low. It's very hard to get enough B complex in you. It's enough to survive,
right?
But so you're just above scurvy, and that's with vitamin C. You're just above minimum.
Wow.
But we're shooting for optimum here, right? So it's one of those things, man. If you think about it, take one. It's really hard to overdose. That's a terrible question. I'm usually good. No, I'm almost invariably good for at least one dose when I'm home in the morning, and sometimes a second dose when I remember at night.
Okay.
But that doesn't mean it's right. I would do more vitamin B, and then the other one is vitamin D. D is in dog.
Right.
Vitamin D3, 10,000 IU a day, because most people don't get enough vitamin D. It's a sun vitamin. We talked about this as a hormone. It's not really a vitamin.
Right.
But 300 years ago, it was great to get your vitamin D from the sun, because most of us were out most of the day, at least in these climes, herding sheep or whatever. And you were dead by 28. Life expectancy was 28. You weren't worried about having half your arm chopped off because of the skin cancer you had growing up in Florida. Yeah. So I'm not saying stay out of the sun. Just wear your sunscreen, especially with your complexion. Yeah. The blue eyes and the recessive genes where you're more susceptible to it. Although people think that the dominant genes, African American genes, think you get sunburned just because you have a dark tan or darker pigment doesn't mean you can't get burned and can't get skin cancer.
Right.
But you're just a lot more susceptible, Dave. So again, wear your sunscreen, but get your vitamin D in a pill form. Better living through science.
All right, vitamin D and B.
Yeah, that goes for
Got
everybody.
it. Thank you, Doc.
All right.